As the cold Atlantic winds battered the Liberty ships, hundreds of captured German women nurses, secretaries, and factory aides huddled in fear, convinced they were sailing toward humiliation or death. Rumors spread like fire through the cramped quarters. They'll shave our heads and parade us through the streets, make us scrub their floors on our knees. Yet when the ships reached America's shores, something no one expected happened.
I can't
Instead
believe
of
we're
revenge,
finally safe.
they found kindness, blankets, fresh bread, and respect from the very soldiers they'd been taught to hate. This journey across the ocean became the first step toward redemption, humanity, and a bond that would quietly rewrite the aftermath of war. The rain came down in sheets across northern Germany that April morning in 1945, turning the hospital compound's courtyard into a sea of mud. Anna Muller pressed her back against the cold brick wall, watching as American tanks rolled through the gates she had walked through every morning for 3 years. The iron cross above the entrance, once polished and proud, now hung crooked and rust-stained. She was 24 years old and had seen enough death to age her a decade. Around her, 24 women in gray uniforms stood in silent clusters, their hands raised as ordered. Some were crying. Others stared straight ahead with the blank expression Anna had learned to recognize, the look of people who had already surrendered internally long before the soldiers arrived. "Fräulein, step forward. Slowly." The American officer's German was broken but clear enough. He was tall, with kind eyes that seemed out of place beneath his helmet. His name tape read Harris. Anna moved first, her nursing bag still slung over her shoulder. The bag contained the tools of her trade: scissors, gauze, a stethoscope that had belonged to her father. Behind her came Greta Weiss, the administrative secretary whose efficiency had kept the hospital running even as the Eastern Front collapsed. Greta was 28, rail-thin from rationed food, her blonde hair pulled back so tightly it made her cheekbones look sharp as broken glass. And then there was Lotte, just 19, the daughter of a mechanic who had been conscripted to repair military vehicles. The girl's hands were permanently stained with engine grease, her fingernails chipped and broken. She trembled as she walked, and Anna reached back to steady her elbow. "It's all right," Anna whispered in German. "Do what they say." Captain Harris surveyed them with an expression Anna couldn't read. Not anger, not disgust. Something closer to weariness, mixed with something that might have been pity. He spoke to his sergeant in English, quick, clipped words Anna didn't understand, then turned back to them. "You will be treated according to the Geneva Convention," he said in his halting German. "You will not be harmed. You will be fed. Do you understand?" Silence. The women looked at each other, searching for the trap in his words. Anna had heard stories, whispered accounts of what happened to prisoners on both sides. The Russians were said to be brutal, the British cold and efficient. And the Americans? No one quite knew. Greta spoke first, her voice sharp with barely contained fear. "Where are you taking us?" "To a processing station. Then you'll be transported to a camp." "A camp?" Greta's laugh was bitter, edged with hysteria. "We know what that means." Harris's jaw tightened. For a moment, Anna thought she saw something flash in his eyes, anger perhaps, or shame at what his words implied. "Not the kind you're thinking of. You'll have beds, food, medical care if you need it." "Why should we believe you?" Greta demanded. "Because," Harris said slowly, "my orders are clear. You're prisoners, yes, but you're also women who served in medical and support roles. My government doesn't make war on healers and clerks." Anna wanted to believe him. She had spent 3 years bandaging soldiers, holding their hands as they died, writing their last words for mothers and wives who would never see them again. She had seen the worst humanity could do to itself. But this officer's eyes held something she hadn't expected. Genuine decency. "Load them onto the trucks," Harris ordered his men. "Carefully. They're prisoners, not cattle." One soldier, young with freckles dusting his sunburned nose, helped Lottie climb into the canvas-covered truck bed. She flinched at his touch, expecting roughness, but he simply nodded and stepped back, hands raised to show he meant no harm. His name tape read, "Miller." "Easy, miss," he said in English. though Loti couldn't understand the words. His tone was gentle enough. As the truck rumbled to life, Anna looked back at the hospital compound. 3 years of her life remained in that building, bandaging wounds, holding dying hands, watching boys younger than Lotte take their last breaths. She had lost count of how many soldiers had passed through those doors. Some recovered. Most didn't. The building had been her entire world. The Allies would probably burn it or turn it into their own facility. Either way, that chapter was closed. "Where do you think they're really taking us?" Lotte whispered, pressed against Anna's side. The girl was shaking. Whether from cold or fear, Anna couldn't tell. Anna had no answer. She simply wrapped an arm around the girl's shoulders as the truck carried them away from everything they had known, toward an uncertain future that smelled of diesel fuel and fear. Through the truck's canvas opening, she caught glimpses of the ruined countryside, bombed buildings, cratered roads, burnt-out vehicles pushed to the side. Germany was dying, perhaps already dead, and now they were being carried away from its corpse toward something unknown. In her breast pocket, Anna felt the weight of a photograph her brother Klaus, 21 years old when it was taken, smiling in his Wehrmacht uniform. That was 1943, before Stalingrad. She hadn't heard from him since. She touched the photograph through the fabric of her uniform, a small prayer pressed between her fingers and her heart. Let him be alive somewhere. Let something good come from all this death. The holding barracks were temporary structures hastily erected on what had once been a school playground. Anna could see the rusted swings through the barred windows, a ghostly reminder of peacetime. Wooden walls that didn't quite meet the ceiling let in cold drafts and the sounds of American soldiers talking and laughing outside. 60 women crowded into a space meant for 40. They sat on thin mattresses spread directly on the floor, clutching what few possessions they'd been allowed to keep, and traded whispers that grew darker with each retelling. "My cousin was in Stalingrad," a woman named Helena said, her voice carrying in the dim space lit by a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. "The Russians sent their prisoners to Siberia, worked them to death in the mines. They say you can see the frozen bodies stacked like cordwood. The Americans are different," someone else argued weakly. Her name was Margaret, a cook who had served in an officer's mess. "They follow rules." "Are they?" Greta stood near the barred window, her silhouette sharp against the fading daylight. "They bombed Dresden. 25,000 dead in one night. They burned Hamburg until the streets melted. You think they'll treat us with kindness now that they've won?" Anna sat with Lotte, whose young face was pale with exhaustion and streaked with dirt. The girl hadn't eaten the bread. The guards had brought military rations. Hard and tasteless, but sufficient. Anna broke her own portion in half and pressed it into Lotte's hand. "Eat," she said gently. "You'll need your strength." "For what?" Lottie's voice cracked. "They're going to shave our heads, Anna. They'll parade us through the streets like animals. I heard the guards talking. They're sending us across the ocean. You don't speak English. How could you know what they said?" "I saw their faces, the way they looked at us." Lottie's hands trembled, like we were, contaminated. Like touching us might spread something terrible. Anna had seen those looks too. Some soldiers gazed at them with curiosity, others with something harder, judgment. Perhaps, or the residue of battle-born hatred. She had also seen the families whose sons and husbands would never come home, all because of a war Germany had started. She couldn't blame them for their anger, but she had also noticed the young, freckled soldier named Miller who had helped Lotte, and Captain Harris with his careful German and weary eyes that held no cruelty. "Listen to me," Anna said, loud enough for the women nearby to hear. Several turned to face her, desperate for any voice of reason. "I don't know what's coming, but I know this. We survived the war. We survived the bombings and the hunger and the fear. We can survive whatever comes next." Greta turned from the window, arms crossed tightly across her chest. "Survive? As what? Servants? Slaves? They'll put us to work rebuilding what we helped destroy. Every American who lost someone will want revenge. As women," Anna replied firmly. "As human beings who did what we had to do to live through hell." "You're naive," Greta said. but her voice lacked conviction. Perhaps. But I'm also still alive, and I intend to stay that way. The barracks fell silent except for the sound of wind whistling through the gaps in the walls. Outside, footsteps approached. The door opened with a metallic screech, and Captain Harris entered with 2 guards flanking him. The women tensed collectively, a wave of fear rippling through the cramped space. Harris surveyed them, his face unreadable in the dim light. Then he spoke in his broken German, each word carefully pronounced. Tomorrow morning, you will be transported to Bremerhaven. From there, you will board a ship. To where? Greta demanded, stepping forward. Several women pulled her back, afraid her boldness would bring punishment. America. The word landed like a stone in still water, sending out circles of disbelief. Women gasped. Someone began to pray. Lottie gripped Anna's hand so tightly it hurt. America? Helena repeated, her voice barely a whisper. But why? What do they want with us? Harris hesitated, and Anna saw something flicker across his face, perhaps uncertainty about how much to reveal, or how to explain decisions made far above his rank by men who would never see these frightened women. You're prisoners of war, he said finally. You'll be held in camps until arrangements can be made for your repatriation to Germany. That's all I can tell you. Camps, Greta said flatly. So we were right. Not the kind you fear, Harris said. And there was an edge of frustration in his voice now, as if he'd had this conversation before and was tired of not being believed. Clean camps, with food and medical care. My country doesn't make war on women. Your country makes war on cities full of women. Greta shot back. Dresden, Hamburg, Berlin. Should we believe you care about us now? Harris's face hardened. For a moment, Anna thought he might leave without another word. But instead, he took a step closer, his voice dropping. I was at Dachau, he said quietly. 3 weeks ago. I saw what your country did to innocents. So yes, we bombed your cities. And yes, people died who shouldn't have. But we're not the same. We don't run death camps. We don't systematically murder civilians. And we sure as hell don't torture prisoners. You'll be fed. You'll be treated fairly. Whether you believe that or not is up to you. He left before anyone could respond, the door closing with a heavy thud that echoed in the sudden silence. Anna lay down that night with Lotte curled against her side, the girls breathing shallow with anxiety. Around them, women whispered prayers in the darkness, Catholic, Lutheran, even a few half-forgotten Jewish blessings from those who had hidden their heritage for years, who had served Germany, despite Germany's hatred of them. Anna touched the photograph hidden in her breast pocket. Klaus, smiling in his uniform, believing he was fighting for something noble. Had he learned the truth before Stalingrad swallowed him? Had he died still believing? Please, she whispered to no god in particular, her lips barely moving. Let him be alive somewhere. Let something good come from all this death. Let mercy exist. But in the darkness, with the sound of 60 frightened women breathing around her and the wind moaning through the walls, hope felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Tomorrow, they would board a ship. Tomorrow, the ocean would take them from everything they knew. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. Bremerhaven port stretched before them like a gray industrial labyrinth, cranes reaching toward overcast skies like skeletal fingers, warehouses with blown-out windows gaping like empty eye sockets, and everywhere the smell of salt water mixed with diesel fuel, rust, and the lingering ghost of burned oil. The Liberty ship SS Joseph Stanton loomed at the dock, its hull painted military gray, its deck busy with American sailors preparing for departure. The ship was enormous, 441 feet long, designed to carry cargo across submarine-infested waters. Now it would carry human cargo. Anna held Lottie's hand as they walked up the gangplank, feeling the metal groan and flex beneath their feet. The sound sent her heart racing. The ship was alive, breathing, waiting. Behind them, Greta moved with stiff-backed pride, refusing to show fear even as her knuckles whitened on the railing. A sailor at the top directed them below deck with efficient gestures. He was older than most, perhaps in his 30s, with gray threading through his dark hair. "This way, ladies. Watch your step. It's steep." The ladder down to the hold was nearly vertical. Anna went first, testing each rung, then helped Lottie navigate the descent. The hold had been converted for passenger transport, rows of bunks bolted to the walls in tiers of 3, a narrow aisle between them barely wide enough for 2 people to pass, and small portholes that let in weak circles of daylight. It smelled of metal and paint and the lingering ghost of whatever cargo the ship had carried before them, perhaps grain or coal or machinery. The smell of the war's industry. "50 women down here," the older sailor said in English to another, not bothering to see if any of them understood. "Another 50 in the aft hold. Captain says we're carrying 100 altogether. Lord help us if we hit rough seas with this load." Anna claimed a lower bunk near a porthole, helping Lottie settle into the one above. The bunks were barely more than metal frames with thin mattresses, but they had wool blankets, scratchy military issue, but warm enough. Greta took the bunk across from them, her face unreadable as she surveyed their new prison. She ran her hand over the metal frame, testing its strength, then looked up at the ceiling where pipes and electrical conduits snaked overhead. 5,000 miles of ocean? Greta said quietly. Anything could happen out there. We could disappear, and no one would ever know. Don't, Anna warned. Don't what? Don't tell the truth? We're at their mercy now. Completely. If they wanted to dump us overboard halfway across the Atlantic, who would ever know? Who would care? A few women nearby overheard and began whispering anxiously. Fear spread like contagion in the confined space. Anna shot Greta a sharp look. You're frightening the younger ones. Perhaps they should be frightened. Perhaps we all should be. Before Anna could respond, the ship's horn blasted a deep, mournful sound that reverberated through the hull like the voice of some ancient sea creature. The engines rumbled to life, a vibration that Anna felt in her bones, in her teeth, in the metal frame of the bunk beneath her hands. The ship was waking up. Through the porthole, she watched the dock begin to slide away. Or rather, they were sliding away from the dock. The distinction seemed important somehow. Germany was staying still while they moved, while they were carried off across an ocean to an unknown fate. Lottie climbed down from her bunk and pressed her face to the porthole beside Anna. Together they watched as the coastline grew smaller, the city of Bremerhaven fading into gray mist. The last thing Anna saw clearly was a church steeple. Its cross, still standing despite the rubble surrounding it. A small defiance against destruction. "I've never been on a ship before," Lottie whispered, her breath fogging the glass. "Neither have I. Are you scared?" Anna looked at the girl's young face, seeing her own fear reflected there. She thought about lying, about being strong and maternal and reassuring. But what came out was the truth. "Yes," she said, "I'm terrified." Lottie nodded slowly, then reached out and took Anna's hand. They sat like that as the ship moved into open water, the deck beginning to pitch and roll beneath them, carrying them away from everything they had known toward an unknown shore where their enemies waited. Around them, other women settled into their bunks. Some prayed, others wept quietly. A few sat in stunned silence, staring at nothing. Helena began to sing softly at first, then louder. An old folk song about a girl leaving home to seek her fortune. Other voices joined in, creating a fragile harmony that filled the metal hold with something almost like comfort. Anna didn't sing. She sat with Lottie's hand in hers, feeling the photograph of Klaus in her pocket, watching through the porthole as Germany disappeared into the mist. She thought of her parents, dead in the Hamburg firestorm. She thought of Klaus, missing at Stalingrad. She thought of the hospital, the soldiers she'd failed to save, the endless stream of broken bodies and shattered lives. The war had taken everything from her except her own life. Now even that felt uncertain, suspended between one continent and another, floating on dark water. The ocean stretched endlessly in all directions, cold and gray as steel. The ship's engines throbbed with mechanical certainty, driving them forward into the unknown. "Anna?" Lottie's voice was small. "Do you think we'll die out here?" "No," Anna said, surprised by the firmness in her own voice. No, I don't think so. Captain Harris gave his word. And I think he's a man who keeps his word. How can you tell? His eyes, Anna said. You can see a lot in a person's eyes if you know how to look. And his eyes weren't cruel. Lotte seemed to accept this, leaning her head against Anna's shoulder. The ship rolled gently, finding its rhythm with the sea, and Anna sat watching the endless water, holding tight to hope because it was all she had left. The storm hit on the third day, and it came with biblical fury. Anna had thought she understood what seasickness meant, a queasy stomach, perhaps some dizziness, mild discomfort. She had been catastrophically, utterly wrong. When the Atlantic swells grew to 15 feet and then 20, the Liberty ship pitched and rolled like a toy in a bathtub, and every woman in the hold learned the true meaning of misery. The ship would climb a wave up, 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 the bow lifting until it seemed they might flip backward, then crash down the other side with a shuddering impact that shook every bolt and rivet. Then the roll would come, tilting the entire world sideways, until women in the top bunks had to brace themselves to avoid falling. Lotte vomited into a bucket until nothing remained but dry heaves that shook her thin frame like a rag doll. Helena lay in her bunk moaning prayers between bouts of retching. Even Greta, proud and stiff-backed Greta, turned green and couldn't keep down water. Anna fared slightly better, though better was relative. She moved through the hold like a ghost, holding onto bunks for support, with a damp cloth she'd torn from her own undershirt. She wiped faces, held hair back, murmured comfort in a voice that felt distant even to her own ears. "This is how they'll kill us," Helena gasped between heaves. "They'll let the ocean do their work for them. No one's dying," Anna said firmly, though she wasn't certain. The violence of the storm felt biblical. God's wrath made manifest in wind and water. Perhaps they were all being judged, paying for sins both committed and inherited. The ship groaned, metal protesting against forces it was never meant to endure. Through the porthole, Anna caught glimpses of waves higher than buildings, white-capped and furious, reaching for the sky with grasping foam fingers. Then the ship would roll, and the porthole would show only sky gray and roiling and equally merciless. Water leaked through somewhere above, dripping steadily onto the floor and creating a thin stream that ran back and forth with each roll of the ship. The hold smelled of vomit and fear and salt water. A hatch opened, boots on the ladder. Anna looked up to see a young sailor descending, barely more than 18, his face pale beneath his cap. He carried a canvas sack over his shoulder, moving carefully to maintain balance as the ship pitched and rolled beneath him. The women watched him warily, too sick to be frightened. He stopped at the bottom of the ladder, seemingly unsure how to proceed. His eyes swept the hold, taking in the misery, and something in his expression softened. Then he began moving through the hold, one hand always gripping something for balance, pulling items from his sack, crackers wrapped in wax paper, apples that wouldn't spoil, chocolate bars from military rations. He stopped at Lotte's bunk, where the girl lay curled in a ball of misery, her face pressed against the thin mattress. He held out a cracker, his hand steady despite the ship's motion. "For the stomach," he said in English, then tried again in broken, heavily accented German. "Für Magen. Helps." Lotte stared at him without comprehension, too sick to process his words. Anna intervened, taking the cracker from his outstretched hand. "Danke," she said carefully, remembering the English word. "Thank you." The sailor's face brightened, transforming from merely young to almost boyish. His name tape read Miller, the same freckled soldier who had helped Lottie onto the truck in Germany. "You speak English?" "A little, very little." She held up her thumb and forefinger, nearly touching, the universal gesture for small. He smiled, a genuine expression of relief and warmth. "These help with seasickness. My mom always gave them to me when we went fishing. Ginger snaps work best. But these plain ones help too. Helps to have something dry in the stomach." Anna didn't understand all the words, but she grasped the meaning from his tone and gestures. She took the crackers he offered, distributing them to the women nearby. Some turned their faces away, too sick to even look at food. but a few accepted gratefully. Nibbling tentatively, the sailor continued through the hold, leaving food at each bunk, occasionally offering a small smile or nod. His kindness seemed almost out of place in their metal prison, a small light in overwhelming darkness. When he reached Greta, she refused to look at him, staring at the bunk above her with stone-faced determination. He hesitated, then set a chocolate bar on her blanket anyway. "I know you're scared," he said in English, though she couldn't understand. "But you're safe. I promise. We're taking you somewhere better." Greta didn't respond, but Anna saw her hand move slightly, not reaching for the chocolate, but acknowledging its presence. As he climbed back up the ladder, Anna called out, "Wait." He paused, looking back. She searched for the English words, pulling from memories of school lessons years ago. "Your name?" "Jackson," he said. "Private Jackson Miller, ma'am. From Ohio." "Anna. And thank you." "Truly thank you." He nodded, perhaps understanding more from her tone than her words, and disappeared through the hatch. That night, as the storm continued its assault but began to lose some of its fury, Anna heard something unexpected: music, faint and distant, coming from somewhere above deck. She pressed her ear to the cold metal wall and heard it more clearly. Brass instruments, a steady rhythm, voices singing in English. The melody was unfamiliar but oddly cheerful: trumpets and trombones, creating something bright and hopeful despite the storm still raging outside. "What is that?" Lottie whispered from above, her voice hoarse from vomiting but curious. "Music," Anna said. "They're playing music. In a storm? Why? Maybe to keep their spirits up. Or," Anna paused, listening, "maybe to remind themselves that life continues, even in darkness." Greta's voice came from across the aisle, rough from sickness but sharp with skepticism. "Or they're celebrating, laughing at us down here, miserable and sick." But Anna didn't think so. The music wasn't mocking or cruel. It was jaunty, hopeful, the kind of music people played when they needed to remember that storms passed, that land existed beyond endless water, that morning would come eventually. She found herself humming along, not knowing the words but following the melody. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the women around her grew quieter, listening. Even Helena stopped moaning her prayers to hear the distant trumpets. The music spoke a universal language, the language of people refusing to surrender to fear, choosing instead to sing in the face of darkness. Anna thought of Jackson Miller, barely more than a boy, descending into their hold with crackers and kindness. She thought of Captain Harris with his promise of humane treatment, small gestures in an ocean of uncertainty. Maybe, just maybe, they would survive this crossing after all. Norfolk, Virginia, emerged from the morning mist like a promise Anna wasn't sure she could trust. The harbor stretched wide and calm after days of violent seas, dotted with ships of every size, military vessels with their gray hulls and deck guns, merchant marines loading and unloading cargo, even a few fishing boats with colorful flags fluttering in the breeze. Behind the docks, the city rose in shades of brick and concrete, church steeples piercing the pale sky, streets busy with automobiles and people going about their morning routines. Streetcars ran on tracks, traffic lights changed from red to green. Life, ordinary life, continuing as if the world hadn't just torn itself apart. Anna stood on deck with 24 other women, the rest still below preparing to disembark. Captain Harris had allowed them up for their first glimpse of American soil, and they lined the railing in silent awe, gripping the cold metal with white-knuckled hands. "It's so whole," Lottie breathed beside her. "Nothing's destroyed." She was right. No bombed-out buildings with skeletal walls reaching toward the sky. No rubble-filled streets where homes had once stood. No empty lots marked only by foundation stones and memories. The city was intact, thriving, untouched by the devastation that had consumed Europe. "Of course it's whole," Greta said bitterly from Anna's other side. "The war never reached them. They sent their men to die on our soil, in our cities, but their own homes slept safe. Their children didn't huddle in bomb shelters. Their mothers didn't burn." Anna didn't argue. There was truth in Greta's words, even if the bitterness was misplaced. America had suffered. She'd seen enough military cemeteries in newsreels to know that. But their suffering had been selective, contained to the men who went overseas. The homeland had been spared. The gangplank descended with a heavy clang that echoed across the dock. Shore personnel assembled below, military police with white helmets and armbands, officers with clipboards checking lists, and a cluster of women in distinctive uniforms Anna didn't recognize at first. Then she saw the red crosses on their white pinnies. "Red Cross nurses," she whispered. "Like in Geneva." "Don't trust them," Greta warned immediately. "It's a show for the cameras." And indeed, Anna spotted several men with large cameras mounted on tripods, photographing everything: the ship, the women on deck, the Red Cross personnel organizing supplies on tables set up along the dock. The documentation of mercy, she realized. Evidence for posterity that America had treated its prisoners with humanity. Proof for history books and newspapers. But her cynicism faltered when she actually walked down the gangplank, her legs unsteady after days at sea, and a Red Cross nurse stepped forward with a smile that reached her eyes and transformed her entire face. "Welcome," the woman said in careful, precisely pronounced German. "I'm Nurse Patricia Edwards. You must be exhausted from your journey. Please, come this way." She gestured toward the tables, and Anna saw what was spread across them: fresh bread, not the hard military rations they'd been given on the ship. Milk in glass bottles with condensation beading on the outside. Apples, red and perfect. Cheese. Real butter. Things Anna hadn't seen in proper quantity for years. Lottie made a small sound beside her, almost a whimper. The girl started forward, then stopped, looking back at Anna uncertainly. "Is it real? Or is it a test?" "Go on," Anna said gently, her voice thick. "It's real." They moved to the tables together, a slow stream of women approaching the food with a mixture of hunger and suspicion and desperate hope. Anna accepted a piece of bread from a smiling Red Cross volunteer, a young woman with dark hair and kind eyes. The bread was soft, still slightly warm from the oven, and when Anna bit into it, the taste brought tears to her eyes. Real bread. Not sawdust mixed with flour to stretch the rations. Not the gray, dense blocks that had sustained them through the last hungry years. Real, honest, wonderful bread made with white flour and butter and care. She looked up and found Captain Harris watching from a distance, his hands clasped behind his back, his face unreadable. Their eyes met across the dock, and Anna found herself nodding a small gesture of acknowledgement. He had promised they wouldn't be harmed. So far, he had kept that promise. A photographer approached their group, his camera hanging around his neck. "Ladies, could you hold up your bread for the picture?" Anna didn't understand all the words, but his gestures were clear. He wanted them to pose, to smile, to create an image of grateful prisoners receiving American charity. Part of her bristled at the manipulation. They were props in someone's propaganda. But another part, the part that had been hungry for too long, that had watched patients die because there wasn't enough food to help them heal, simply didn't care. Let them take their pictures. Let them document this moment. The bread was real, and that was what mattered. Lotte laughed suddenly, a sound of pure surprise and relief that cut through the morning air like a bell. "Anna, they gave me milk. Real milk." The girl's face was transformed, joy breaking through exhaustion and fear like sun through storm clouds. She held the glass bottle up to the light, marveling at the white liquid inside. And then Anna was crying too. Tears streaming down her face as she held her piece of bread and watched the youngest among them discover that perhaps they weren't sailing to their doom after all. Perhaps mercy, real mercy, was possible even from one's enemies. Around her, other women were having similar revelations. Helena wept openly, clutching an apple like a precious jewel. Margaret, the cook, actually laughed a rusty sound that suggested she'd forgotten how. Even some of the harder women, those who had maintained their suspicious silence, began to soften. Greta stood apart, arms crossed, refusing food. But Anna saw her watching, saw the way her rigid posture had begun to soften, saw how her eyes tracked the Red Cross nurses moving among the prisoners with genuine kindness. Even Greta's armor was cracking. Captain Harris approached their group, and the women tensed instinctively. But he simply said in his broken German, his voice quiet and sincere, "The war is over. You've suffered enough. Start again here." 5 words that Anna would carry with her for the rest of her life. Start again here. She looked past the dock to the city beyond whole, peaceful, alive with possibility and morning light. Children walked to school in clean clothes. Women pushed baby carriages. Men went to work in offices and factories that weren't producing weapons. Normal life, continuing. The American flag flew from a pole near the harbor master's office, stars and stripes bright against the pale morning sky. 48 stars. She counted absently. 48 states in this vast country that had never been invaded, never been occupied, never learned what it meant to have your homeland become a battlefield. It was the flag of the enemy. But standing there with fresh bread in her hands, and milk on her lips, and sunshine on her face, after days in the dark hold, Anna felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, small and fragile and possibly foolish, but hope nonetheless. They were alive. They were being treated with decency. And for the first time since the tanks rolled through the hospital gates, Anna allowed herself to believe that perhaps there was a future beyond mere survival. The POW camp sat in the rolling farmland of Iowa, far from any city Anna had heard of. The train journey from Norfolk had taken 3 days. Windows allowing glimpses of America's vast interior, endless fields of corn and wheat. Small towns with white churches and neat houses, children waving from farmhouse porches as the train passed. It was a different world. Clean. Untouched. Impossibly peaceful. Now Anna stood inside the compound's gates, staring at neat rows of wooden barracks painted white with green trim, a mess hall with actual glass windows, and vegetable gardens where prisoners worked under minimal supervision. Guard towers stood at the corners, yes, but the guards looked bored rather than menacing. This was nothing like the camps she had imagined. Single women in Barracks C, called Lieutenant Jennifer Morrison, a brisk woman in her 30s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and an efficient manner that reminded Anna of the best nurses she'd worked with. Married women, or those with children in Barracks D, you'll be assigned work details tomorrow morning at 800 hours. For now, settle in and rest. Dinner is at 1800. That's 6 o'clock civilian time. Barrack C housed 40 women in bunks that had thin but clean mattresses, proper pillows with white cases, and wool blankets that smelled of soap rather than must. Each bunk had a small wooden footlocker for personal belongings. Windows, actual windows with screens let in fresh air and sunlight. A communal washroom at the end of the barracks offered the greatest miracle. Showers. Real showers, with hot water and soap. Lotte turned the shower knob experimentally, gasping when hot water actually poured out, steaming in the cool air. Anna, it works. Real hot water. For the first time in weeks, Anna smiled genuinely. Then let's use it before someone tells us it was a mistake. They showered in shifts. Women who hadn't been properly clean in months standing under the hot water with expressions of near-religious ecstasy. Anna let the water run over her head, washing away the salt and fear and exhaustion of the crossing. She used the plain soap they'd been given, nothing fancy. Standard military issue, but it smelled clean and worked well enough. When she emerged, wrapped in a towel with her hair dripping, she felt almost human again. That evening, clean and dressed in the simple work clothes they'd been issued, blue cotton dresses that fit reasonably well, the women gathered in the mess hall. The building was large and airy, with long tables and benches, windows on all sides letting in the golden evening light. The food was basic but hot and plentiful. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes with gravy, green beans, fresh bread, and for dessert, apple pie with actual sugar. Anna ate slowly, savoring each bite, watching the others do the same. Some women cried while they ate. Others ate in stunned silence. A few talked quietly, their voices gradually growing louder as bellies filled and spirits lifted. Greta sat beside her, for once too focused on eating to voice her suspicions. But when a guard walked past a middle-aged man with gray hair who nodded politely, Greta's shoulders tensed automatically. her fork pausing halfway to her mouth. "They're not going to hurt us," Anna said quietly. "Not yet, Greta." Anna set down her fork. "At some point, you have to accept that maybe, just maybe, they mean what they say. Why should I believe them? Because they give us hot showers and decent food?" Greta's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "It's a strategy, Anna. Make us grateful. Make us compliant. Then when we're useful to them, they'll what?" Anna interrupted. "We've been here 6 hours. In that time, no one has struck us, threatened us, or treated us with anything but basic human decency. When will it be enough for you? What will it take for you to believe that perhaps we're not living in your nightmare scenario?" Greta didn't answer, but her jaw tightened. She stabbed at her mashed potatoes with unnecessary force. The next morning, work assignments were posted on a bulletin board outside the administration building. Women crowded around, some reading English well enough to translate for others. Anna found her name and traced her finger across to the assignment. Infirmary. Nursing duties. Her heart lifted. They were letting her be a nurse again. Lotte was assigned to gardens, vegetable cultivation. Greta, with her administrative skills, was assigned to camp office, clerical duties. Anna reported to the infirmary at 8 o'clock sharp, her stomach tight with anxiety. What if they changed their minds? What if this was some kind of test? What if? A woman in a crisp nurse's uniform looked up from her desk as Anna entered. She was in her early 30s with auburn hair pulled back in a practical bun and warm hazel eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. "Anna Muller?" She pronounced it carefully, trying to get the German vowels right. "I'm Emily Turner, head nurse here. Captain Morrison tells me you worked in military hospitals? 3 years in surgical?" "Yes," Anna replied in halting English, each word carefully formed. 3 years. Surgical ward. Some trauma also." Emily's smile widened. "Then you're exactly what I need. Come, let me show you around. Do you understand English well enough? Or should I find a translator?" "I understand. Some. Slowly speaking is helpful." "Slowly speaking," Emily repeated, nodding. "I can do that. This way." The infirmary was small but well-equipped beds for 20 patients. Proper medical supplies organized on clean shelves, even medications Anna hadn't seen since before the war. Penicillin, sulfa drugs, real morphine for pain management. Emily walked her through procedures, speaking slowly and clearly, occasionally demonstrating when words failed. "Instruments are sterilized here," Emily showed her the autoclave. "We maintain strict hygiene protocols." "Have you worked with penicillin before?" "No," Anna admitted. "Only older methods. Carbolic acid, iodine. Then I'll teach you. It's remarkable, you'll see. Infections that would have killed patients 2 years ago now clear up in days." By midday, Anna was cleaning instruments and preparing dressing supplies while Emily saw patients. A guard came in with a sprained ankle. Emily treated him with the same efficiency she showed everyone, and Anna noticed something. The guard thanked her, and Emily thanked Anna for handing her the bandages. "Thank you, Anna." 2 words, simply spoken, but they lodged in Anna's chest like a stone. When had anyone last thanked her? Not in the hospital in Germany, where gratitude was buried under exhaustion and despair. Not on the ship, where they were cargo. But here, in a POW camp in the middle of America, a woman she'd met 4 hours ago thanked her for doing her job. That evening, Anna found Lottie in the barracks, dirt under her fingernails but a smile on her face. "Anna, you should see the gardens. Tomatoes, beans, lettuce, real vegetables growing in neat rows. And the American guard, Corporal Stevens, he showed me how they use compost to enrich the soil. My father would love to know these techniques. When I go home, I can teach him." The casual mention of "when I go home" struck Anna. Lottie was already imagining a future beyond this place, beyond the war. Hope, taking root like seeds in soil. Even Greta seemed marginally less hostile. "The office work is, Adequate, she admitted grudgingly when Anna asked about her day. They trust me with actual files. Not sensitive ones, of course, but personnel records, supply inventories, maintenance schedules. It's real work, not punishment labor. Though I'm sure that will change once they've assessed our usefulness. Anna lay in her bunk that night listening to the sounds of women breathing softly in the darkness. No longer the frightened gasps of the ship, but something approaching peace. Through the window, she could see stars bright and clear in Iowa's wide sky, so different from the smoke-choked skies over Germany. She thought of Emily Turner, who had welcomed her into the infirmary without hesitation, who had patiently taught her American medical terminology, who had thanked her. She thought of Captain Harris's words. Start again here. Maybe. Anna allowed herself to think. Just maybe. Starting again was possible. In her footlocker, wrapped in a handkerchief, lay the photograph of Klaus. She hadn't looked at it since arriving at the camp, afraid of what memories it might unleash. But now she took it out, studying his young face in the dim light. I hope you're alive somewhere, she whispered. I hope you found mercy, like I did. I hope someone showed you kindness when you needed it most. She tucked the photograph away and closed her eyes, falling asleep to the sound of Iowa wind through window screens and the distant hoot of an owl hunting in the fields beyond the fence. For the first time in years, she didn't dream of fire. The announcement came in August, 3 months after their arrival. Lieutenant Morrison gathered the women in the mess hall and delivered the news in clear, careful German. You are now permitted to write letters to family in Germany. They will be censored for security purposes, but they will be sent. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Letters, contact with home, with family, with the pieces of their lives left behind. Anna sat at a rough wooden table that evening with a piece of paper in front of her, a pencil in her hand, and no idea where to begin. Who was even left to write to? Her parents were dead, killed in Hamburg's firestorm. Klaus was missing, presumed dead in Stalingrad. She had aunts and uncles, cousins scattered across what remained of Germany, but would they receive letters? Did they even survive? She began anyway. To any family member who receives this, I am alive and safe in America, held as a prisoner of war in Iowa. I am treated well, I work as a nurse, I have food and shelter, and I am not harmed. If Klaus is somehow alive, please tell him I am well. If anyone knows what happened to Aunt Helga in Berlin, please write to me. I pray you are safe. I pray this terrible war is truly over and we can begin to heal. With love, Anna. She folded the letter, addressed it to her family's last known address in Hamburg, likely nothing but rubble now, and placed it in the collection box. Around her, other women wrote their own letters. Some wrote quickly, words pouring out. Others stared at blank pages, overcome. Lottie wrote to her father, if he still lived. Papa, I am in America. I am safe. They are teaching me new farming techniques. When I come home, I will show you. Greta wrote nothing. She sat with arms crossed, watching the others with her usual skepticism. You should write, Anna told her. Someone might be waiting to hear from you. My husband is dead, Greta said flatly. Killed at Normandy. My parents were in Dresden. I have no one. Maybe write anyway. For yourself. But Greta shook her head and left the mess hall, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence her departure created. The letters went out, carried across the ocean by military mail, but weeks passed with no replies. Germany was chaos, cities destroyed, postal systems collapsed, millions of displaced people searching for family. The silence weighed heavily. Then, in September, the first replies arrived. Helena received a letter from her sister alive in a displaced persons camp, searching for her children who had been evacuated and never returned. She wept openly reading it, joy and grief mixing into something indescribable. Marguerite learned her husband had survived and was rebuilding their bakery in a part of Munich that had been spared. She carried that letter with her everywhere, reading it until the paper grew soft and fragile. Anna received nothing. She checked the mail every day, hope dimming with each empty-handed return to the barracks. Maybe everyone was dead. Maybe there was no one left who remembered her name. In October, a letter finally arrived, not from Germany, but from the American Red Cross. Anna opened it with trembling hands. Dear Miss Müller, records indicate your brother, Klaus Müller, was captured at Stalingrad in January 1943. He is currently held in a Soviet POW camp in Siberia. His status is listed as alive as of August 1945. We have forwarded your letter to the Red Cross representative in Moscow, who will attempt to deliver it to him. We cannot guarantee success. Sincerely, Red Cross International Services. Alive. Klaus was alive. Anna sat on her bunk, clutching the letter, shaking with sobs that came from somewhere deep in her chest. Alive. After all this time, after assuming the worst, he was alive. Emily found her like that, tears streaming down her face, the letter crumpled in her fist. Anna, what happened? Are you hurt? My brother, Anna managed in broken English. He is alive. In Siberia. Alive. Emily sat beside her, not touching but present. That's wonderful news. Truly, but Siberia. Anna shook her head. The camp's there, they say. I know, Emily said quietly. The Soviet camps are harsh, but he survived Stalingrad. That means he's strong. He'll make it home. Anna wanted to believe that. She wiped her eyes, smoothed out the letter, read it again. Alive. 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 That evening, she wrote another letter. This time addressed to the Red Cross representative in Moscow. Dear Klaus, I don't know if you'll receive this, but I have to try. I am alive and safe in America. I am a prisoner. Yes, but I am treated well. They feed us. They allow me to work as a nurse. They show us mercy I did not expect. Stay strong. Survive. Come home when you can. Germany will need people like us to rebuild people who remember how to heal, rather than destroy. I love you. I never stopped praying for you. Your sister, Anna. She handed the letter to Lieutenant Morrison, who promised to forward it through proper channels. Then she returned to the barracks, where she found the other women gathered around Helena, who was teaching them an old folk song. Their voices rose in harmony, filling the barracks with melody. Women who had been enemies, who had served different armies, now singing together in the gathering dusk. Anna joined in, her voice rough from crying but strong enough. They sang songs of home, of rivers and mountains and fields, of mothers and lovers and children. They sang of longing and loss, and the stubborn hope that somehow, someday, they would see those places and people again. Emily appeared in the doorway, drawn by the music. She stood listening, not understanding the German words but clearly moved by the emotion behind them. When the song ended, she applauded softly. That was beautiful, she said. Will you teach me the words sometime? Yes, Anna said, smiling through her tears. Yes, I will teach you. In that moment, standing between two worlds, one destroyed, one offering shelter, Anna felt something shift inside her. The war had taken so much, but it hadn't taken everything. Music remained. Hope remained. The possibility of connection across enemy lines remained. Klaus was alive in Siberia. She was alive in Iowa. And somehow, impossibly, they would both find their way home. The church needed help. That's how Corporal David Stevens phrased it when he approached Anna one morning in November. The small Lutheran church in the nearby town of Cedar Falls had lost half its roof in a summer windstorm, and the congregation, mostly elderly farmers and their wives, couldn't manage the repairs alone. Would some of the prisoners be willing to volunteer? Anna translated the request for the others that evening. She expected skepticism, perhaps outright refusal. Why should they help the enemy rebuild? But Lottie surprised her. I'd like to help. My father was a mechanic. He taught me about structures, about fixing things. I want to do something useful. It might not be safe, Greta warned. The townspeople might what? Lottie challenged. We've been here 6 months. No one has harmed us. Maybe it's time we stop seeing threats everywhere. In the end, 12 women volunteered. Anna, Lottie, Helena, Margaret, and 8 others piled into a military truck driven by Corporal Stevens on a crisp Saturday morning. The ride to Cedar Falls took 20 minutes through countryside painted in autumn colors, gold and red and orange leaves against blue sky. The church was small and white, its steeple still standing but listing slightly. Half the roof was covered with tarp that flapped in the wind. A group of townspeople waited in the yard, mostly older men and women, watching the truck approach with expressions Anna couldn't read. Fear, suspicion, curiosity. The women climbed out slowly, aware of the scrutiny. An elderly man with white hair and weathered hands stepped forward. His name was Robert Miller, the town's retired pastor. "Thank you for coming," he said in English. Corporal Stevens translated. "We need all the help we can get before winter. There's coffee and sandwiches for lunch. Let's get to work." They worked all day. Lottie climbed onto the roof with a fearlessness that made Anna's heart race, helping the men measure and cut shingles. Anna and Helena passed supplies up, held ladders steady, cleaned debris. Marguerite, the former cook, helped in the church kitchen preparing lunch for the workers. At noon, they gathered in the church basement to eat. The townspeople had laid out a simple meal: sandwiches, potato salad, cookies. The American workers sat on one side of the room, the German prisoners on the other, an invisible line neither group seemed ready to cross. Then a child appeared, a girl no more than 7 with blonde braids and curious eyes. She walked directly to Lotte and held out a cookie. "For you," she said in English. Lottie looked at the cookie, at the child's innocent face, and something inside her crumbled. She took the cookie with trembling hands. "Danke," she whispered. "Thank you." The child smiled and scampered back to her mother, a young woman whose husband, Anna learned later, had died at Normandy. Yet she allowed her daughter to offer kindness to a German prisoner. That small gesture broke the barrier. People began to mix, to share tables, to communicate through gestures and the few German words some locals remembered from grandparents who had immigrated decades ago. Robert Miller asked Anna about her nursing work, genuinely interested. His wife, Margaret, showed Helena photographs of their son killed in Italy, a loss that still showed in her eyes but didn't prevent her from offering Helena a second sandwich. In the afternoon, they returned to work. By sunset, a quarter of the roof was repaired. Real progress made by former enemies working side by side. As they prepared to leave, Robert Miller approached their group. "You've done good work today. If you're willing, we could use your help again next Saturday," Anna translated, and every woman nodded. On the truck ride back to camp, they were quiet, but the silence felt different, lighter, less burdened. Lottie still held the cookie the child had given her, now wrapped carefully in a napkin. "I'm keeping this," she said softly, "to remember that not everyone hates us." The second Saturday, more prisoners volunteered. By the third Saturday, 20 women made the trip. The roof was finished by Thanksgiving, and Robert Miller invited the prisoners to join the dedication service. The church was packed that Sunday, townspeople filling the pews, German prisoners standing at the back, uncertain of their welcome. Robert Miller stood at the pulpit, his voice carrying through the space. "This building was damaged by storm," he said. And Corporal Stevens translated quietly for the prisoners. "But it was rebuilt by hands from many places. Some hands that grew up in these fields, and some that came from across the ocean. In war, we were enemies. In rebuilding, we are neighbors. Let that be our testimony." After the service, people approached the prisoners slowly at first, then with growing warmth. A farmer's wife gave Anna a jar of homemade jam. "For your kindness," she said through gestures and smiles. Even Greta, who had remained skeptical throughout, seemed affected. A child different from the one who had given Lotte the cookie, but equally innocent, offered Greta a flower picked from the church garden, a simple daisy, already wilting. Greta stared at the flower for a long moment. Anna saw her jaw working, saw tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. Then she knelt down to the child's level and accepted the flower with both hands. "Danke," she whispered. "Thank you." That night, Greta placed the pressed flower in her footlocker. She never spoke about it, but Anna saw her take it out sometimes, holding it carefully, studying its fragile petals as if they contained some truth she was still trying to understand. The truth was simple but profound. Mercy was stronger than hatred. Rebuilding was possible, and former enemies could become, if not friends, at least human beings who worked side by side towards something better than war. The announcement came in February 1946. Repatriation would begin in March. The war had been over for 9 months. Germany was divided into zones, occupied by the Allies, struggling to rebuild from complete devastation. And now the prisoners would be sent home, to what remained of home. Anna sat in the infirmary with Emily when Lieutenant Morrison delivered the news to the medical staff. Emily's face fell. "March?" she said quietly. "That's only a month away." "Yes," Morrison replied. "The first transport will take about half the women. The second transport in April will take the rest. Everyone should be repatriated by May." After Morrison left, Emily and Anna sat in silence. They had worked together for 9 months now, developing a rhythm that made the infirmary run smoothly. Emily had taught Anna about penicillin, about new surgical techniques, about American medical practices. Anna had shared her experience with trauma cases, with managing limited resources, with keeping calm in crisis. They had become, Anna realized, friends. "I don't want you to go," Emily said finally. "I know that's selfish. I know you need to go home. But I'll miss you." "I will miss you also," Anna replied, her English much improved after months of practice. You showed me that enemy is not always enemy, that people can be kind even to those who fought against them." "We weren't fighting against you," Emily said gently. "You were nurses, administrators, mechanics. You were trying to survive. Still, you could have treated us badly. Many would understand if you had. But you showed mercy instead." Anna struggled to find the right words. "You changed how I see everything. You changed me." That evening, Anna and the other prisoners gathered in the mess hall for a meeting about repatriation. Lieutenant Morrison explained the process: transport to the coast, ship to Bremerhaven, processing, then release into occupied Germany. "Some of you have expressed interest in remaining in America as displaced persons," Morrison continued. "This is possible under certain circumstances. You would need to find sponsors, agree to employment conditions, and go through immigration procedures. It's not simple, but it's an option." Greta raised her hand. "What kind of employment?" "Domestic work, primarily. Cooking, cleaning, childcare, or agricultural work. Nothing that requires security clearance, obviously." After the meeting, the barracks buzzed with conversation. Some women were desperate to go home, to search for family, to see what remained of their lives. Others feared returning to nothing: no family, no home, no future. Lotte sat on her bunk, torn. "My father might still be alive. I should go back to find him. But what if he's not? What if there's nothing there?" Helena had already decided. "My sister is alive. I must return. Even if Germany is destroyed, she's there. Family is everything." Greta stood by the window, staring out at the Iowa darkness. "I have no one in Germany. Everyone I loved is dead. But this," she gestured vaguely. "Staying here, as a servant? Is that better?" Anna didn't know what to say. She understood both sides, the pull of home and the fear of what home had become. The days passed too quickly. In mid-March, the first transport list was posted. Lottie's name was on it. Helena's. Marguerite's. Not Anna's. She would go in April. The morning the first transport left, Anna stood with Emily outside the gates, watching the truck carry 50 women toward the train station. Lottie waved from the back, her face a mixture of hope and fear. "Safe journey," Anna whispered. "Find your father. Rebuild." Emily squeezed her hand. "Your turn will come soon enough." "Yes," Anna agreed. Too soon. The camp felt empty after that first group left. Only 50 women remained, and the barracks echoed with absence. Anna threw herself into work, trying not to think about April, about the ship that would carry her back across the Atlantic to a homeland she barely recognized anymore. Greta approached her one evening in early April. "I've decided to stay," she said abruptly. "I've found a sponsor. A family in Des Moines needs a housekeeper. It's not what I imagined for my life, but it's a life. More than I'd have in Germany. I'm glad, Anna said, and meant it. You deserve a fresh start. We all do, Greta replied. Even if we find it in unexpected places. The April transport list was posted on the 15th. Anna's name was there, scheduled to depart April 20th. 5 days. Emily gave her a gift the night before she left, a photograph taken at the church dedication, showing Anna and Emily standing side by side, both smiling. On the back, Emily had written, "To my friend Anna, who taught me that humanity transcends borders. Never forget, you are more than what the war made you." Anna held the photograph, tears blurring her vision. "I will keep this always, and I will remember you. I will remember all of this. Write to me," Emily said. "Promise you'll write." He promised. That final night, Anna lay awake listening to the sounds of the camp one last time. The wind through the screens, the distant bark of a farm dog, the breathing of the few women who remained, all scheduled for departure in the morning. She thought about Klaus in Siberia, about whether he was still alive. She thought about Hamburg, about the rubble where her family's home had stood. She thought about the hospital, about the soldiers she'd failed to save, about the weight of all that death. But she also thought about Emily's kindness, about the child who gave Lottie a cookie, about the townspeople who worked alongside former enemies to rebuild a church. She thought about mercy, about redemption, about the possibility of starting again. The Liberty ship that would carry them home waited in Norfolk. But this time, Anna wasn't sailing toward an unknown doom. She was sailing toward a known devastation, but also toward the work of rebuilding, of healing, of creating something better from the ruins. She closed her eyes, Emily's photograph pressed against her heart, and slept. The letter arrived in West Germany in September 1963, forwarded through 3 different addresses before finding Anna Mueller in her small apartment in Hamburg's rebuilt city center. The return address was Iowa, USA, and the handwriting was neat, careful, unmistakably American. Anna's hands trembled as she opened it. "Dear Frau Müller, you may not remember me, but my mother, Emily Turner, spoke of you often until her passing last year. She asked me to reach out if I ever had the chance. She wanted you to know that working with you in that camp infirmary changed her perspective on many things. She said you taught her that the enemy is never as simple as we're told, that humanity persists even in the darkest times." She kept a photograph of the staff and prisoners at the camp's garden dedication in 1946. "I'm enclosing a copy. That's you. 3rd from the left, and Mom next to you. You're both smiling. I hope this letter finds you well and that life has been kind to you since those difficult days. Sincerely, Margaret Turner Roberts." Anna's hands trembled as she unfolded the photograph. There she was, younger by nearly 2 decades, standing in an Iowa garden beside Emily Turner, both of them smiling at the camera. Behind them, other women worked in the soil, Lottie kneeling with a trowel, Helena tending tomato plants, even Greta visible in the background. She remembered that day with perfect clarity. The summer heat, the smell of fresh earth and growing things, the moment Lieutenant Morrison had allowed them to photograph the garden they'd built together. She remembered Emily's laugh, warm and genuine, when Lotte had accidentally splashed mud on both of them. She remembered learning that enemies could become friends, that hatred wasn't inevitable, that people could choose mercy even when revenge would be understandable. Now Anna was 43 years old, a head surgical nurse at Hamburg General Hospital. The city had risen from its ashes, not the same as before, but alive, functioning, moving forward. New buildings stood where firebombed ruins had smoldered. Children played in rebuilt parks. The harbor, once choked with sunken ships, thrived again with commerce. Lotte had found her father alive in Munich, and they'd rebuilt his mechanic shop together. She was married now with 3 children, and she'd sent Anna a photograph last Christmas, showing her whole family standing proudly in front of the shop with its sign, "Friedrich and Lotte Schmidt, Automotive Repair." Helena had reunited with her sister and never stopped searching for her children. She found one, her daughter, alive in a children's home in Bavaria, and that reunion had sustained her through the grief of learning her son had died during evacuation. One child saved from two. A partial victory in a war that left only partial victories. Greta had indeed stayed in America, becoming a U.S. citizen in 1952. She'd written to Anna a few times over the years, brief letters that never quite expressed emotion, but conveyed facts. She'd moved from housekeeping to office work, then to managing a small insurance agency in Des Moines. She'd never remarried after losing her husband at Normandy. But she'd built a life. That counted for something. And Klaus? Klaus had survived Siberia barely. He'd returned to Germany in 1949, gaunt and haunted but alive. He worked now as a teacher in Berlin, helping the next generation understand history so they wouldn't repeat it. They wrote to each other monthly, sharing the ordinary details of rebuilt lives. Anna unfolded the letter again, reading Margaret Turner Roberts' words. The enemy is never as simple as we're told, that humanity persists even in the darkest times. She thought of the Liberty ship crossing the Atlantic, of her terror mixed with desperate hope. She thought of Captain Harris and his promise of humane treatment, a promise kept. She thought of Private Jackson Miller bringing crackers to sick women during a storm. She thought of the Red Cross nurses with their bread and milk and genuine smiles. She thought of Emily Turner, most of all. Emily, who had welcomed her into the infirmary, who had taught her and learned from her, who had shown her that mercy was stronger than hatred, that rebuilding was always possible, that former enemies could work side by side toward healing rather than destruction. Anna placed the photograph on her kitchen table, propping it against the sugar bowl where she would see it every morning with her coffee. Two women smiling in an Iowa garden, the war behind them, the future uncertain but no longer dark. That evening, she sat down to write a reply to Margaret Turner Roberts. The words came slowly. Her English, though much improved during the war, had grown rusty with disuse, but the meaning was clear. Dear Mrs. Turner Roberts, your mother showed me that mercy is stronger than hate. She helped me remember how to be human again when I had forgotten what that meant. I think of her often, and I am grateful that our paths crossed, even in such dark times. Please tell your children that there was once a German nurse who learned about grace from an American woman in Iowa. Tell them that walls between enemies can fall when people choose to see each other as human beings first, before nationality or uniform or anything else. Your mother gave me hope when I had none. She gave me friendship when I expected only punishment. She gave me a future when I thought I had none. I carry her gift with me every day, with deep respect and enduring gratitude. Anna Müller. She sealed the letter and placed it by the door to mail the next day. Through her apartment window, Hamburg's lights twinkled in the darkness, a city rebuilt, reborn, refusing to remain a grave. Anna looked again at the photograph. Two women in a garden, choosing hope over hatred, building life from destruction. She thought of all the women she'd crossed the ocean with. Some returned to Germany, some stayed in America, all carrying forward the lesson they'd learned in an Iowa POW camp, that humanity persists, that mercy matters, that healing is always possible for those brave enough to try. The war had taught them all to fear. But a few remarkable people, Captain Harris, Emily Turner, Robert Miller and his congregation, even the child who offered Lottie a cookie, had taught them something stronger. They'd taught them how to forgive, how to rebuild, how to live again. The Liberty ships had carried them across an ocean into unknown territory. But what they'd found there, unexpected kindness, quiet redemption, the stubborn persistence of human decency, had carried them across something far greater. The distance between enemies and the bridge back to hope, the journey from war to peace, the long road from hatred to healing. Anna turned off the light and went to bed, the photograph remaining on the table where morning sun would illuminate it. Tomorrow, she would mail the letter. Tomorrow, she would go to work, continuing the healing that had become her life's purpose. Tomorrow, she would live the future that Emily Turner and so many others had made possible by choosing mercy over revenge. The war was over. The work of peace continued, and Anna Müller, once a frightened prisoner crossing the Atlantic toward an unknown fate, would carry that work forward one patient at a time, one act of kindness at a time, one bridge built between former enemies at a time until her last breath. The photograph remained on her table for the rest of her life, a daily reminder. Walls fall, enemies become friends, and mercy real, genuine, transformative mercy can change the world. One person at a time, one choice at a time, one act of unexpected kindness at a time.